Is Russia's winter offensive coming to a close after achieving basically none of its aims? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's break down just why I think Russia is running out of gas. Okay, so the first piece of evidence is, of course, the control map. You can see that this is the fourth with Russian forces actually losing ground in Pervomaisk, which is interesting because the Russian forces have been on the offensive and Ukrainians have basically pivoted to defense. You can see on the 5th, no change at all to the front lines. And then here on the 6th, we're looking at just tiny advances in Marinka, a town that basically has been in Russian hands for the better part of 2 weeks. And Ukraine is really just performing its withdrawal to more secure terrain, likely this reservoir and the mountains surrounding it. Will be high ground on the far side of it. And so collectively, we're seeing just absolutely just fractional changes to the control map, right? You can see this is another change in the 4th. This is outside of Kromova. You can see that Russian forces advancing, controlling a lake, and a basically a cluster of bushes. This is the kind of offensive action that we're seeing. Like, this is the best that Russia can offer, right? North of Avdiivka, yeah. I mean, again, you can see this is not like a tremendous, stunning breakthrough here, and this is Russia running into an extremely robust Ukrainian defensive position here in the form of these forested areas and reservoirs, right? All this to say, it seems like Russia's ability to even focus on an objective and move towards achieving it has become really limited in the last maybe week or so. But the real evidence is right here. In the last 24 hours, Ukrainian military reporting Russia launching just 27 combat engagements. To give you an idea, that's about a 75-80% reduction from their total engagements across the front line during the height of their winter offensive, right? And it seems like by most reports, Russia's throwing all of its remaining combat power into Avdiivka in an effort probably to complete this encirclement. It seems like, in all likelihood, I hypothesize that the Kremlin, who hasn't really demonstrated very sophisticated military planning, or in terms at least of their selection of objectives and tactical goals, probably gave the Russian military capture Avdiivka by the end of the year. And certainly when we take a look at the state of Avdiivka, let's see if we can find it here, right? We'll say the start of the Russian winter offensive. Let's say it happened October 18th, right? That sounds about right. You can see here, October 18th. This was the state of Avdiivka, right? So you could see that Russia's massive winter offensive, right? And you can see Ukrainian forces did push the Russians back a little bit, but as a result of just an absolute, by most accounts, 5 battalions worth of Russian equipment being destroyed, hasn't actually closed the gap on Avdiivka at all. It's extended Russian forces, stretching them out, extending them across these lines here. But what it hasn't done is actually cut off Avdiivka in any operational way. And to me, I really suspect that, the Kremlin looked at this map of Avdiivka in October, and they probably told their commanders, you have to encircle this city and cut it off, right? That is the Russian tactic that they used to seize Severodonetsk and Lysychansk earlier in the war a year and a half ago. And so the fact that they couldn't execute on a tactic that 18 months ago, this would have been a perfunctory encirclement of Ukrainian forces. The fact they couldn't do it now, I think, is a sign that these commanders are probably going to end up fired by the Kremlin, frankly. And that's where I think the remaining Russian combat power is being burned by most reports. Now, guys, if you're like the Kremlin, maybe you have some New Year's resolutions, some things you wanted to get done going into 2024, right? The Kremlin's certainly going to have to go back to the drawing board. But if you need a little boost, right, you don't have to start recruiting convicts. You can just turn to Strike Gum. Strike Gum is, of course, my energy drink alternative. It's a caffeinated gum with 90 milligrams of caffeine in every single piece. That's as much as a Red Bull, as much as an Amp Energy, but best of all, zero sugar, 100 milligrams of alpha. It's great. 50% of the profits from this first production run getting donated to Ukrainian charities that benefit civilians who've been injured or displaced in the conflict. So check it out, strikegum.com. We also have military and veteran discounts and a bunch of discounts, actually. So you should definitely check them out. Okay. Now, one of the things that we're seeing from Russia is, again, like we talked about, this last gasp in Avdiivka. And for the past 3 days, reportedly, we've been seeing Russian forces really push hard, trying to complete this encirclement of Avdiivka. And again, to me, this is like quintessential Kremlin tactics, where they clearly have a fixation on an objective. They refuse to let go of it, despite the fact that clearly Ukraine has robust defenses, and they may not have been prepared fully to defend Avdiivka in, say, November, but now Avdiivka has been thoroughly reinforced, deeply mined, and this is as impenetrable a city as any. But the fact that the Russian military is going to continue to throw men and material into this conflict, to me, indicates that someone at the highest levels has demanded this city be captured. And the fact that they have basically stopped launching attacks on the entire rest of the front line and concentrated all in Avdiivka tells me that someone is absolutely desperate to produce results. And again, I look and I see this and I think someone at the Kremlin said that by the first week of 2024, you're going to have Avdiivka encircled. And they're making one big last attempt and they're going to lose. And then you're going to see the Kremlin go back to the drawing board. That is at least my thesis of what we're looking at here. But it's a sign that Ukraine's strategy of pivoting to the defense and relying on defense in depth and choosing specific locations to mount more rigid defenses and relying on stretching Russian forces, pulling them out of their defensive positions and forcing them onto the battlefield where they can be eliminated with artillery, drones, mines, and other standoff weapon systems is really paying dividends. Ukraine is fighting a very efficient war right now, and they're showing that when it comes to being on the defense, if you have refined tactics and good strategy, you don't necessarily need a lot of high-end aid, right? They obviously need artillery shells. They're going to need to replenish losses to things like their Bradleys, but their need for some of the more highly technical mine clearers, for example, or top tier main battle tanks, they may not be as essential on the battlefield right now, given that they're fighting a defensive strategy that's relying on attrition and simply inflicting massive casualties on to Russian forces. Anyway, guys, that is really all I had for you. Of course, a huge thank you to the Colonel tier members at combatvetnews.com. Thank you to our Lieutenant tier members. Could not do this without you guys. Hit like and subscribe. Tell the YouTube algorithm content's good. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.